I guess I'm not too surprised that we have a full house tonight, especially since PBS has been churning the Downton Abbey this last weekend, and we'll be looking for the next season in January. And the library will be purchasing the DVD, so you can put your holds in for that. So before we start tonight, I'd just like to mention a few upcoming events. So we have the Friends of the Library, who act as our special fundraising organization here. And as you can see, we're setting up for a book sale, which is our 9th annual holiday book sale that will begin on Friday at 10 a.m. Until 6 and run on Saturday from 10 until 2. So I hope that you will visit the book sale. We try to call out the best of the best, so they will be definitely gift-giving worthy. Also, we have this very nice handcrafted colonial bookcase by Alstead craftsperson Paul Rodrigue, and that's a raffle that I would invite you to purchase a few tickets for. It's a beautiful bookcase, and we have some of our antique loud collection books in it just to show it off. And then thirdly, we have for the second year our Book Lovers calendar that is for sale for $10. And I was thumbing through it today, and I came across the entry for January 1st. And it's and each day's entry has a little book review. So this one is on the, it's called The Wet and the Dry, A Drinker's Journey by Lawrence Osborne, which is about one man's experience drinking in bars in foreign countries. So that's the Happy New Year Day description. So besides the Friends of the Library who help fund this, we have some local sponsors and organizations. Brattleboro Savings Loan has been with us from the beginning. Vermont Country Store, New Chapter Inc., Wyndham World Affairs Council, and this year new as a sponsor is the Brattleboro Camera Club. And of course we always have the Vermont Department of Libraries helping out as well. And this is a program of the Vermont Humanities Council. We're sending around a guest register, so if you don't mind signing on that, you'll get some of their emails announcing events, and you'll get some of my emails as well. And at the back of the room, we have some feedback forms, and we have the schedules for the rest of the year. There's some really great talks coming up in January through May. And January will be, we'll have a talk called Delicious to the Ear, the Inspiring Voice of Maya Angelou. And this will be done by UVM professor Emily Bernard. So I'm sure that'll be a good one too. Okay, so on to Dr. Emerson. She has been an artist in residence and costume designer and professor at Middlebury College since 1990. Prior to coming to Middlebury, she worked professionally as a costume designer and for films, commercials, and professional theater. Her professional credits include The Wonder Years, Saturday Night Live, Ringling Bros, Barnum Bailey Circus, Private Lives for the California Repertory Theatre, and The Importance of Being Earnest at the Olney Theatre Center, which was a 1998 Helen Hayes Award nominee for outstanding costume design. She is a recipient of the J.S. Seidman Award and earned her MFA at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts. So you have an eminently well-qualified presenter tonight. So please welcome Dr. Jule Emerson.
Before I start, I did want to tell you that I'm not, because of the setup here, a friend of mine is going to do the images. Oh, I forgot to turn it on. Sorry, I'm overclipped. Can you hear me now? No.
Can you hear me now? Whoa. Wow, that's different. Okay. I think they can hear me in the next county. Boy, is that right? There's a lot of echo. Echo.
That's good.
Okay. Anyway, what I was starting to say is my friend Sid, who is sitting over there with my laptop, is going to be doing the images for me. So I want you to know I don't have Tourette's, but I will occasionally tap my table. And that will mean, that's my key to her. So just if you're going, well, she was good, but she had this weird tapping thing. So you know that I'm not really part whatever it is, what is the thing that eats the wood? I guess I'm not part termite yet. I wanted to start before I begin and just check to see if there were any liberals in the audience. This is Vermont, after all. I am a little concerned. You watch VPR. You live in Vermont. I think the chances are pretty good. I don't know if you know this or not, but your affection for Downton Abbey will destroy you. And I wanted to bring it to your attention. It may not destroy you until after Christmas, so you're probably safe to shop. But I wouldn't put count a whole lot in 2015. I'm just saying. And Fox News would never lie to us. Also, if you are wealthy, whether conservative or liberal, immersion in Downton Abbey will surely cause you to desperately need a butler of your very own. Downton Abbey mania is everywhere. And until I began prepping this talk, I have to tell you, I had no idea of the breadth of Downton Abbey mania. The popularity and commercial tie-ins are unbelievable. Out on the street, sales of long silk gloves, pearls, empire waist dress have soared ever since Downton Abbey aired. And the popularity of Downton Abbey and the beautiful costumes have inspired a whole new demand for 1900s through 1920s fashion accessories. But beyond that, there are online quizzes to help you determining which job you'd be, which character you'd be, which job you'd have, and even which couple you identify with. Screening parties are popular throughout most of Western media markets, and even little Vermont, even little tiny Vermont, has the second largest Downton Abbey screening party in the country, second only to LA. And if you watch the Downton Abbey preview thing that was on Sunday, there's a lot of promotion going on for that. And I think, I have an image up there. People, again, are dressing up. I will be actually one of the costume judges for that. If you're going to a Downton Abbey party, though, when they're having all this food and costume judging and lectures on wine and blah, blah, blah. If that's not your scene, because I don't know about you, I've lived in Vermont long enough, I like things a little more quiet than that. You can find solace in playing Downton Abbey bingo. And you can cover yourself in Downton Abbey oil of Olay while you play bingo. Commercial tie-ins include jewelry, teas. Downton Abbey costumes have inspired many contemporary fashion designers, and the fact that we get to sit through a 2.5-minute Ralph Lauren ad every time we watch Downton Abbey certainly is an example of that. Do the next slide, Sid. There's even Downton Abbey coloring books, although I'll tell you, based on fact, the Downton Abbey designers do not draw the costumes. So this is somebody, somebody enterprising person went, I could make money if I drew figures and sell them as Downton Abbey, and that is what they are doing, although they're pretty bad figures. There are Downton Abbey paper dolls. There are Downton Abbey trading cards. This one's my personal favorite. Love that one. And finally, you know you have made it to the big time when there are Downton Abbey Sesame characters, right? Now, why all the fuss? I can only speak for myself. I do think Downton Abbey is television at its finest. I am personally pretty sick of all the violence. It's like you either see reality television, and often people I don't really want to have in my living room, or it's decent cop shows with repetitive plots and a lot of violence. So I think that the thing that has hooked me on Downton Abbey is the fact that there are these wonderful storylines with extraordinarily gifted actors, wearing beautiful stuff in a beautiful place. What's not to love about that? The character in Downton Abbey are so well designed that it can be rather shocking to be reminded that these are actors wearing costumes. I mean, who are these people? Hello? What are you doing out of your proper outfit? Phyllis Logan. So when I started prepping for this talk, I had to spend time looking at pictures of these people like wearing contemporary clothing. It was very disturbing. The most visual way this series charts the passage of time is through fashion. And it's absolutely true, taking us from 1912 to 1924. Aside from some minor set dressing, the settings of scenes 1 through 5 are frozen in time. So I think, was it last season or maybe the season before, we finally got to go to spend some time in London, right? I think that was last season. But most of the down, and every Christmas we go somewhere. So this was the time in Scotland, but essentially it's Downton Abbey. The place is a principal character in this story, and yeah, I don't know about you, but I haven't noticed new mortar and bricks going up. I mean, the facade, the building, the interiors are pretty stable. That doesn't change a lot. So we as viewers are really dependent on the costumes to tell us when the story is changing. During the course of how much we have seen so far, the undergarments have undergone quite a change. I think you appreciate that. So here you sort of see a little bit of the evolution of women's undergarments. And I think because Violet's a bit of a holdout, you know, she tends to stay, you know, a good 5 years behind the others, but look at how, you know, corsetry and undergarments for ladies have evolved. And this is what the undergarments look like now that we're in the 20s. And I mean, huge difference in the way that the women are carrying themselves and the way in which they are restricted. I have here. Aside from the automobiles, the toaster, remember the toaster? You really are. I mean, again, aside from those pieces that have come in, it's really up to the clothes. And, you know, what's awesome for me as a costume designer is that the executive producer even acknowledges that costumes are way important on the show. Here is Gareth Neame, who is the executive producer, with Laura Carmichael, who plays Edith. Poor sad Edith. And to quote Neame, the costume designer is really part of the producing team because she has a huge amount to do with the telling of the story. Because this passage of time is illustrated through ladies' fashions, my chat tonight is going to focus on the ladies. But if anyone has questions about the menswear that they want to ask me after the talk, I'm happy to tell you, because I have done a lot of research on that, particularly the World War I stuff, which is really a lecture unto itself. Each series has multiple directors and cinematographers. This adds to the feeling of freshness and energy on set and during pre-production, filming, and edit. How many directors do you think have been used on Downton Abbey? Any guesses? 25, 7?
12.
Who said that?
12.
You win the prize. You win a trip to Downton Abbey for yourself and a family of 4. And I just know this library is going to take all the money from the book sale and give it to you for that. Anyway, I wish. Sorry. They're going to beat me up after this talk now. But yes, 12. Absolutely. 12 different directors. And I think that there's a lead director for each season who oversees the rehearsals for each block. But given the fact that there are 12 different directors with different aesthetics operating independent of one another, because the filming for the downstairs scenes is happening simultaneously with the filming of upstairs scenes in 2 different locations. So, I mean, it's a huge thing that when we see a particular episode, we don't go, this is so not like last week. I mean, it is quite impressive, the continuity. And the reason I think that the consistency is maintained has everything to do with the constant presence of, here we go again, who's there? I can't. Oh, Liz Trubridge. And she is the lady, I think, on your right. And she is often included in the Downton Abbey specials that we've seen on TV about backstage. But she's everywhere. I mean, I think this woman is actually 20 years old, but just all the work, the hours she does have aged her. Both she and the historical advisor, Alistair Bruce, are key players in terms of really bringing the wonderful stories to life. To date, there have been two different costume designers for Downton Abbey. The first designer, Susanna Buxton, did series 1 and 2, and her assistant designer, Carolyn McCall, designed series 3 and 4. And Carolyn McCall had been Susanna's assistant. No doubt that is the only reason there has been, again, how many, did anyone know there were two different designers on the show? Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a pause. It was just very smooth. Typically, Costumes has 7 weeks of prep time before filming begins for the whole season. And that's not a lot of time. It's enough time really to get the costumes together for the first 2 episodes, so that while they're filming the first 2 episodes, you know, the workroom is very busy doing clothes for the rest of the season. A typical budget is $31,000 to $41,000 per episode, which sounds like an enormous chunk of change. However, Lord Grantham's suit alone, this dinner suit, cost $4,200. So it goes really fast, really fast. McCall follows the same creative process and working practice begun by Buxton. Her inspiration comes from myriad sources, from detailed illustrations to black and white stills. Vintage fashion magazines are an awesome resource that they use. Selected images and fabric swatches become inspiration boards, and that's what you are seeing here. Queen Alexandria of Denmark, shown here, served as an inspiration for Violet's costumes. A contemporary Violet's and mother to King George V, Alexandra was a woman of Violet's generation that women like Violet would have looked to see how she was coping with the post-war world. Violet follows Queen Alexandra's penchant for wearing a choker and always maintaining a very high neckline. Have you noticed that recurring style? And I love this because I teach history of Western dress, and what has happened throughout the history of fashion is people, the commoners or the nobles throughout the history of fashion have always gone, oh, the king's wearing short hair, I'm cutting off my hair, the king's doing this, I'm doing that. So we always copy the royals or our betters, I guess, and which is exactly what she and other women of her class did, not knowing that the reason Alexandra favored the high neckline was because she had a childhood scar on her neck. And that's why most of the fashions, you know, prior to the 19th century changed, had a lot to do with various wounds that the royals would have. And here we have her again. During the costume prep period, McCall works from offices at Cosprop, which is the second biggest costume house in London. She also works at Ealing Studios, which is the oldest continuously operating studio in the world. Downton Abbey has workrooms at both Cosprop and Ealing. Do you know what I mean when I say a workroom? It's not where they take the poor orphan children in. It does have that feeling, though, doesn't it? It's actually a big sewing room with mannequins, big tables for cutting. Think of Project Runway. You get the idea, and lots of fitting rooms. Cutter Sarah Humphrey, shown here, is ironing, and apart from the beading, much of the patterning and construction of the ladies' gowns is done by Sarah. Yeah, there she is ironing. The staff at Cosprop does the menswear and the servants' uniforms. From the very first meeting with each actor, she has a rack holding the different styles and shapes. The first fitting was all about learning what looked good on each actor. And I do the same thing. When I'm fitting, when I'm about to start working on costumes for someone, you want to see what styles look good on that person. And ladies, we all know this, right? We can go into a store and see something that looks fabulous and put it on and realize it doesn't look fabulous on me. It looks fabulous on that mannequin or on that, you know, girl who's 5'9" and weighs 3 pounds. But let's not go there, okay? I mean, can we talk? Back to Downton Abbey. So scenes are considered elements of the whole, with everything intersecting together like a painting. There we go. So this again is in the wardrobe room, and you can see the names of the different characters. The world of color comes from the art director, who determines the overall palette of each room. So for example, this is the green room. And what they did, even though Highclere Castle is stunning, I've seen pictures of Highclere Castle before and after the movie goes in, and they add things. They change out a few pieces of furniture. They definitely usually bring in some plants. They will put in little bits of decor that better reflect the particular time that they're showing. So the art director has a great deal to do with how they use the color of each room, and then the costume designer, obviously, you know, this is a very specific palette. If I'm designing clothes for this, you know, for a scene that's happening in this room, I really need to be conscious of not putting anyone in green, for one thing, right? We'd lose them, aside from which green is very hard to wear. So the setting, just as in theater, the setting of particular moments within the story has a lot to do with the choices that the designer makes. Here we see, again, the juxtaposition of the colors of the ladies' costumes. I'm wondering if this is the one I'm thinking of. So you can really see how they stand out against that ground. Can you do the next one, Sid? And this, isn't that beautiful? The evening, next. And here, this is one I love, this blue outfit, the Ballet Russe inspired outfit that Sybil's wearing. But you can see we lose Mom, right? Cora's like, woo, ghost Cora. Okay. So again, it really impacts the palette. Next. This is the archway without people. I mean, I love it. I love the impact that this world, this, you know, beautiful setting provides for this show. The ladies' costumes are produced in 3 different ways. They are either shopped, built, or rented. And in this case, from left to right, Sybil was shopped vintage, so that's an original garment. Mary was built, and Edith was rented, which again reflects her poor status for Edith. I don't get nothing new. And Mary, because of her stature, almost everything we see Lady Mary wear is made, because she's a big, you know, she's not heavy, but she's very tall and kind of large boned. What has happened, I will often joke about this, and I need to preface my mentioning this by saying to you, I'm kidding, but not really. But I as a costume designer, it's often a source of sadness that Americans have gotten so damn big, because we really can't fit your children in our antique clothes because of, you know, again, the fact that many of you did not chain smoke and drink heavily during pregnancy. And so anything we can do to change that back so we can use the clothes. Again, this is the joke. One of the only original dresses used in the series on people, I'd say on one of the principal actors, is this dress that Daisy wears in season 2. Aside from the fact that people are big now and not as tiny as the Victorians and the Edwardians were and the people in the early 20s, are there other reasons why they tend not to use much that is vintage in the production? Any thoughts? Fragile, yeah. Stuff from the 20s, I mean, I got to tell you, stuff from the 20s is getting to be 100 years old because of, you know, the date that we're on now. And so things are very fragile. And even if oftentimes this thing called dry rot happens, there's staining in terms of color, particularly light garments most often have discoloration. But aside from the size, it's the fragility of the clothing. Is there any other reason? What? The value? Yeah, although honestly, because to make a costume for Mary is going to definitely run them at least $4,000. So you can buy a vintage something for under that, for the most cases. But the other reason is that we live in a throwaway society. And so, you know, granted, we may be moving more towards an upcycle, recycle kind of thing, but until I'd say the 50s and 60s, people reused things. And if I see that I may have a few older members of the audience who get that. And so it was common throughout the entire history of fashion to take garments, and even no matter how wealthy you were, as styles changed, and again, fashion change was very slow until really the 19th century. Then it started speeding up, and then it really, well, it's been like that ever since. But things would be recut. You know, and when you look at the history of fashion, we're going from big garments to a little smaller, to a little smaller, to a little smaller, from the crinoline period right up to the 20s. So that you can recut that, or have your dressmaker recut that, make that into the new style. Okay, now we're in the 1890s. Okay, 1905, 1908, you can recut that. 1920, you can recut that. After the 20s, I mean, they got to buy new stuff because there's just nowhere to go. But the truth is that's the other thing that happened to a lot of authentic garments, is that things got used up. And so one thing to note is that a lot of the authentic antique pieces that we see now, where we go to a museum or we look, you know, in photographs or whatever, those things are the things nobody wanted to wear, honestly. The things that have survived tend to be the things that were like, really? I'm not wearing that. You know, and then I'm going to give it to my daughter because, you know, I love her, and your daughter goes, I'm not wearing that. So often those are the pieces, just so you know. Okay, Daisy. Bits and pieces of vintage material, though, found in rental houses or antique shops are able to be used in the show. And that's the key to what they've done with this production in the women's wardrobe, to really give it an authentic feel and to give it that integrity that we're all responding to. We're not, for the most part, seeing entire garments that are period, that are vintage, but we're seeing that wonderful beaded placket, or this stunning, oftentimes it's the front piece, center front, a collar, or just a bodice panel that has been artfully, garments are designed around, and that's really the formula for many of the pieces that are used in this show. And they go to Paris, they go to London, they go to, you know, all different locations to find things. So this, in this dress where we see Mary, that front beaded panel, again, was a vintage piece. Here we have Mama, and again, that front panel on her dress is the vintage piece. So now you're not going to be able to enjoy the stories anymore. You're just going to watch them to see the next vintage piece. I'm sorry I've done this to you. Many of the dresses, again, incorporate pieces that are nearly a century old. Each daughter was given her own palette. So at the beginning, when they are telling the story brand new, we don't know these people, we turned in, we watched this show, and fell in love. But to help us, I think, keep it straight, the daughters were designed with a specific palette for each girl and a specific kind of cut or style. So Mary was done in bold, solid, strong colors, blues and burgundies. Sybil was in mauves and blues. Edith in ambers, ochres, greens, and pale pink. And here we have all three. And you can see strong color contrast on those. However, as the series developed, the color world became more fluid because we knew who they were. We didn't need a strong color division to help us. And we see in this instance that there is still a fairly strong color difference. Here, excuse me, hello. Here we see that the sharp color contrast has really lessened. But the I think style of each dress is more independent. What? What? I can't hear you. Is the, I don't know.
Somebody's checking.
Okay. Each daughter began the series with a different style. Sybil was more bohemian and individual. Mary, high-end, classic, yet fashionable. And again, what happened last season? What affected how Mary dressed last season? What? Yeah, mourning. Before, and her mourning, I mean, what was very interesting was how they handled the mourning. Prior to World War I, a woman whose husband died would wear black for 2 years. 2 years you wore black. And, you know, the amount of crepe, the particular fabric called crepe, was dictated, and this all began because Queen Victoria, at the death of Prince Albert, assumed black and wore black for the rest of her life. And because, you know, in the late 19th century and during the Victorian times, you get the name Victoria, was a huge fashion figure, huge fashion influence. And so all of the ladies who read there were ladies' magazines at this time, so it was very fashionable. It was expected. And remember the scene, I think, in Gone with the Wind, where Scarlett, there's a reference that she's not still wearing black. So a proper lady would wear black for 2 years upon the death of a husband, or I think, or a parent. And you'd wear it for a year and a half if you were the child. And yet, I mean, all these rules. Well, what happened, and men, of course, would have to wear a black armband for a month. A little imbalance there, just a little bit, because the wives mattered so much to them. But what happened is that with World War I, there was so much death. There was so much death, the entire population of Britain would have had to wear black for the rest of their lives. And it was so painful and so depressing, and the loss of so many men was so significant, that rule just went no more. And that is why when we see Mary actually gets out of the mourning pretty quick, given what had preceded it. And, you know, the rule was after you wore your black for 2 years, then you went to like a lavender, you know, different shades of blues and purples. And if you go back and look at the episodes, you'll see that there is that transition from black to sort of the purples and violets, which is again a way to sort of segue away. To my mind, one of McCall's greatest challenges was in the bridal gown designs for season 3. McCall wanted Mary's wedding dress to contrast with how hard and cold Mary had been as a single woman, and she wanted it to be soft, understated, kind of romantic. The fashion for the time was for lace or satin. McCall definitely thought that lace would better suit Mary. She wanted her to shimmer, and it's kind of hard to shimmer in lace. So what she did, of course, is she contacted Swarovski, the crystal company, and they provided a bazillion crystals that were all hand sewn onto the dress. And a stunning dress it was. This 1830s diamond tiara was rented from a jeweler in London, Bentley and Skinner. The frame was altered so it could be worn lower on the head, and it's valued at £205,000. This tiara had its very own set costumer whenever it was used, and that means there was one wardrobe person assigned just to the tiara to make sure that I think it did not walk away, and it did not get hurt. Can anyone tell me when this tiara was used a second time? Dun, 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 dun. Yes, who said that? You are awesome. Can I tell you that no one else in the times I've done this lecture have ever guessed that? Edith. Yeah, during this time in history, a family like the Crawleys has a family tiara. Don't you all have family tiaras? I mean, what is wrong with you people? No, really? Oh my God. No, they would have had a family tiara. I'm very, like blue collar myself, so, oh, the family tiara, oh yeah. That they would have handed down through generations. So of course that is what was worn. And it's interesting to note that therefore this was also the tiara that was used on the mother and the grandmother when they were married. There were two considerations in the design for Edith's wedding gown. One was that Edith had to look beautiful as a bride, right? That's pretty obvious. Of course she has to look beautiful as a bride. The other one, though, was that she had to look equally beautiful flopping on the bed, right? Do you remember the scene after when she's, oh my God, it's so stunning. When she runs up those stairs, throws, I wish I could have found a still photo of that, where she throws the veil and it just kind of sifted down. And then she, you know, hurls herself on the bed, sobbing. It was beautiful, beautiful. Her dress was designed around an original train covered with flowers and crystals, and these motifs were repeated at the hip of the gown. During the past 2 seasons, I think you, have delighted in the contrast between these two ladies. I mean, how much fun are they, you know? McCall flies to LA to fit McLean when she's being used. Unlike Violet, the costumes for Mrs. Levinson illustrate her eagerness to embrace the latest fashions, and as a nouveau riche American, happy to display her riches. I mean, just seeing, to me, the scenes with these two ladies, you know, just the best, absolutely the best. There, all of the below stair scenes and most of the bedroom interiors are shot at Ealing. So again, important. I'm going to say that again. Most of the bedroom scenes and all of the scenes between, so Bates and Anna in the pantry, when we have the head butler and Mrs. Hughes talking in their rooms, all those kitchen scenes, the servants' hall where we had the sexual thing with the two men, all of that is shot at a movie studio, as well as the elegant bedrooms that that the family have. The only thing that really is shot at the castle are the exteriors and the downstairs. I mean, the scenes in the dining room, the scenes in the parlors are shot here. And that is something I think they've done a bang-up job on, because you would never know. The reason that is done is that because this is still a home, and because the history of Highclere, and I think we've all, if you've listened to any of the specials on Downton Abbey, just as our family in this story are struggling to keep Downton Abbey what it is that none of those homes, those estates, managed to stay as they were, and nobody has the kind of servants that they had. So all those servants' quarters, the downstairs, all of that in these homes, for the most part, it's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So in order to recreate that, they have to do it in a studio, which also affords them better lighting angles and so forth. They started in the first season doing the upstairs, the bedrooms, the bedrooms of the family in actual bedrooms here, and found that there just wasn't enough room for, you know, the crew and the cameras and to get the scenes that they wanted to do. So that is how that, for these location shoots, a trailer becomes the mobile costume studio. And, you know, they're very respectful of Highclere Castle, so that there is not, it's unlike, I've done a lot of movie work, and when I've done work, we often take over the house, and one of the rooms in the house is the costume room or the wardrobe room. But I think because of the value of the property, and that most everything else is done outside of that space when they're on location. Although the costumes are built at Ealing Studios, often weeks before filming, actors usually have a check fit in the wardrobe trailer. So each actor who's a principal has their own little trailer, and then there's also the wardrobe trailer. And here we see one of the wardrobe ladies in there. So we're looking inside, and so this is the ladies' wardrobe. Here you can see these were hanging in that larger shot. You can see continuity sheets. So when you do film, every time there is a take, you take a picture of the actor wearing that garment, get their hair, their makeup exactly the same. And again, there are separate people who are doing hair and makeup, but I just couldn't resist throwing that in. But the way a garment is buttoned, one thing that's awesome for wardrobe continuity in this show is that because the garments are fairly stable, unlike today where if you're wearing a hoodie, or I did a movie where the kid was wearing a hoodie, and trying to control that from take to take was very difficult. So it's wonderful that the clothes that they have on, but if you see one of the women wearing a scarf or a boa, watch her walk out of a room and into the next room. And that's where you really, the continuity can be a little bit tricky. So that's what those are there. Let's see what we have here. We have one of the guys' vest and some bins. And I wanted to look at one of these bins. What does that say? Can you see what's in one of those bins? Did anybody read that? No? The long underwear. And, yeah, one thing that is not seen on stage but fills the wardrobe is the silk underwear that is what we use in film because it's very, very thin. So silk thermals, blankets, and puffacoats will sit on rising ground. High clear apparently attracts chill winds from every direction. According to producer Liz Trubridge, and I quote, "It's its own microclimate. Even on a hot day it's cold. On a cold day it's freezing." So here we see some of our actors again rehearsing in their puffacoats. The first day shooting on series 3 was in mid-February. This is the wedding. So remember that wedding. Remember how everyone looked so happy and it was light and it was sunny and you just imagine it's a beautiful June day, not knowing that on the other side are ladies waiting with hot water bottles. Everybody's wearing a coat and none of them look very happy either, right? There you go. Another one. Yeah, very, very. Where's the wedding glamour now, huh? Jim Carter, who plays Carson, and I quote, "Filming is a bit like life in service. There's a lot of waiting and then moments of frenetic activity." And, you know, a shoot like this, and again, there have been a lot of little specials on the show that I imagine some of you have seen. They do a lot of waiting around. So once they go through, once they get there and they go through hair and makeup and wardrobe, they hit the breakfast truck. And it's just a lot of, so it's amusing to hear what all the actors do, a lot of game playing. Apparently Edith is a killer. He has his own cricket team. So he spends all his time organizing the different cricket events for his club. Here we have, I think, an example of the daily call sheet. And this is how you know what time to be where, what things are being filmed at what time. And again, it's not uncommon to be shooting one scene in one room while just across the hall another scene is being shot. Or that's in the house. You know, at Ealing Studios there may be 2 different downstairs scenes being shot because actually, you know, the length of time they have, what did I say, 13 days to do, you know, an episode, that is not a lot of time when you have to do a take from every angle. Every dining scene, the actors hate doing the dining scenes because every dining scene they have to completely reset the table with new food, fresh food. So because they take, notice, you'll see that they take a dining scene is shot from almost every actor who speaks, his angle. All of the dialogue, so it takes a lot of time to make it through that. If any actor has to actually eat during that scene, initially apparently during the first season, they love, oh food, oh biscuit, ah. But then if you eat a biscuit during a take, the first take, you have to eat a biscuit during the consequent 10 takes. So it's, you know, it can be, it's a learning curve on that, obviously. Earlier, I cited the inclusion of vintage textiles into many of the ladies' dresses. But again, including vintage textile pieces into these costumes is not without its risks. Sybil's harem dress, shown here, was designed to reflect the influence of the designer Leon Bosque, who was a designer for the Ballet Russe. Huge, huge impact on fashion in the early 19-teens. It was a very, very bold choice for Sybil to wear this. And it perfectly reflects Sybil's defiance of tradition. So it was an awesome choice. Unfortunately, it split apart during filming, and every time the director yelled, "Cut," it did. So here we see set costumer would have to run with her threaded needle, and that's what you do, is you have all these needles threaded and pinned to your clothes, but it was constantly in need of repair. This is designer McCall, photographed during one of the many on-set repairs. So there's different wardrobe people who do women and other wardrobe people who do men. So the men do the men and the women do the women in film. According to Jason Gill, men's wardrobe, it's a constant battle to keep the costumes looking good, especially with the male actors. Creases, keeping the makeup off, the starched collars. And what's great for the men is we're moving away from paper, very stiff celluloid and paper collars, into a cloth collar that was introduced during World War I that makes its way and starts becoming much of fashion is introduced during wartime and ultimately adapted into styles. But you know, the men put on their clothes and don't think twice about sitting in their pants. And unlike some of maybe the older men in the audience who know how to sit wearing dress trousers and not wrinkle them, this is a learning curve thing that younger gentlemen simply have not learned. Downton Abbey's historically appropriate costumes, all of the actors acknowledge the impact that these clothes have on their development and sustainment of their characters. Actors of both genders, portraying all classes, acknowledge that the pain that they may have wearing the corset or the stiff collar is worth it because they're moving as one would during that era. The ladies unanimously hated their corsets. Again, we're away from corsets now. They hated the corsets, but they respected them. They still, you know, loved them in the morning. Since Hugh Bonneville, here we have the ladies, one of the ladies in the corsets. Again, here. Hugh Bonneville, I think shown here, said, and I quote, "Stiff collars are a pain in the neck," quite literally. Get it? But they affect your bearing and make you stand properly. Since scenes are often shot out of sequence, a common practice is to have duplicates to show anywhere in distress. So that in your typical, if you go to action flicks, for example, you need to know that say you have your leading character, Dirty Harry or whoever it is, and he's going to go through all this stuff's going to happen to him today, they will have 20 of that costume, identical, in the wardrobe trailer, distressed to various degrees, because invariably the most devastating scene where things get nasty and bloody is the first one they shoot, because that's just when they can get that house or something. And the same thing is true here when they did the World War I stuff. They had doubles or triples of everything. Matthew had triples of his military uniform when Thomas was beaten up at the ferret. There were several copies of the same costume. So, because once they do the take of him getting beat up and the garments trashed, you need to do the take again from a few other angles. The character of Thomas, though, provides us with another reason that a wardrobe trailer might have duplicates of certain costumes. And that is dressing body doubles. We had to show a little of the military stuff. That even though he was, remember when they had I think it was a cricket game, the family cricket game, and Thomas saved the day? Well, the sad truth is Thomas can't play cricket to save his life. The actor is completely no sportsman. So they had to hire a body double for him to play cricket. You'll also notice that all the men in this image have their hair parted the same way, which was, again, the rule fashion-wise at that time. Much press has been given to the continuity challenges presented filming the dining scenes. And those of you, we just all had this fabulous Thanksgiving dinner, right? And can you imagine your mom, your wife, yourself, the restaurant, walking out of the kitchen? So we'll see them in the kitchen, right? We see them in the kitchen. We see, what is the name of the cook? Mrs. Patmore and Daisy. Mrs. Patmore said, blah, blah, blah. And then one of the footmen comes in and says, you get up there with that food. They walk out, and they may as well take a bus because they have to go to Highclere Castle to serve that meal. I mean, that's going to be some cold gravy, I got to tell you. So that's the problem. And so really, the continuity on that is dreadful, and matching every single thing, and also having to re-prepare all that food. But there's been a lot of press to that. The other issue is even the wardrobe. So we may see this beautiful scene in Lady Mary's bedroom, and the maid that I love so much, Anna, is helping her, and Mary's putting her long gloves on, and her hair is just so, and then she walks downstairs as she goes to another room, and again, that next scene is shot a month later or 3 weeks later. I mean, there's a huge difference. So that they are tricking us, and quite successfully most of the time too, might I add. In addition to housing the clothes for the principal actors, there we have the dining. Again, my comment about the continuity in the bedroom. In addition to housing the clothes for the principal cast, the trailers also serve as costume collections on wheels for the extras, be it for the village fair, prisoners, Mary's wedding, Buckingham Palace. Extras are always dressed from a separate trailer in a catacall kind of way. So as the costumers have a whole lot of whatever it is, let's say fancy clothes for the Buckingham, beautiful, elegant dresses, and remember there was a lot of extras in that scene. But they have a bulk of these things. They have general size information, and you as an extra just stand outside that trailer, and I look at you and say, yeah, that's about right here, put that on. And that's as much designing that happens. And as a theatrically trained designer, suddenly working in film, it's a real wow, they really don't take these extras very seriously. And that's how that's how they're dressed. It is a whole different kind of an attitude. The people who play the villagers, the village that's connected to the Abbey, have actually developed their own wardrobes because they've become semi-regulars from all those village scenes. Series 4, here we have them at the palace for that. Series 4 had a dark beginning 6 months after Matthew's death. England was still adjusting to new rules, again, waiting on the death of Prince Albert. So we talked about how funeral roles had, the rules related to funereal dress had evolved after World War I. But here we see Mary looking very sad, very glum. But we are moving into the 20s. And we have Mary again. And I think Edith, really what's amazing is that Edith is no longer the dowdy one and actually is exhibiting some style. And certainly has taken on the look of the modern woman for us. The women during the 20s at this time adapted a hat called the cloche. You see her wearing the cloche hat here. And the truth was you couldn't have long hair and wear a cloche. So that's part of why the bobbed hair became so fashionable for women. To convey the new modernism, McCall uses bright colors in Rose's wardrobe and in the wardrobes of most of the women. Again, I think the color is generally pulled back quite a bit in the beginning because, again, to reflect the mood, the somber mood of the home. I think that is when that's the coronation, isn't it? Or isn't that when they are introducing Rose to court? Yeah. So that shows you the 20s clothes, the sleeker line, the simpler line. What do we have here? I love the way they took Edith and suddenly made her so much more fetching. And I think the story arc in last season really gave Edith an opportunity to shine. This dress, green chiffon, Edith wore to a London restaurant. displaying a new silhouette, but the design of the dress holds true to the same design technique used on the girls' dresses since Series 1. And I love that I can begin the talk talking about, you know, a certain approach to helping us relate to the period, the integrity used by finding these pieces and integrating them into the ladies' gowns. And here we see, you know, one of the most fetching dresses from the past season. The same technique is still being used to lend integrity. So again, I mean, in her research for her tear sheets for season 4, McCall included the work of the French artist Georges Barbier. There's more. Here's some examples of his work. Using that silhouette, and then on a shopping trip to Paris, she found a beaded and sequined piece of fabric. It was remounted, sewn into a bodice, and here we have it. And the rest of the dress, again, is built using coordinated chiffon. The wardrobe people nicknamed this dress Beaded. How much do I love that? Season 5 will take place 6 months after the conclusion of Season 4 in the mid-20s. It's Robert and Cora's 34th wedding anniversary. Lady Mary will return in true form now that she's had we've had 1 season dedicated to her grief. My understanding is that her eyebrows are arching every bit as much as they were in the first season. She is definitely, I think the quote I heard was, inherited the deadly heat-seeking wit of the Dowager Countess. So that's the Mary I love. Spoiler alert, there are 3 new characters, and I'm going to show you, when I found out this person was in this next season, however briefly, I just went, oh my God. So if you don't, I'm not going to say the name because I want to honor people who want to be fully surprised, but I do want to show you this image if you want to see it. These are 3 of the new actors. Okay, keep your eyes closed if you don't want to know anything. 3 new cast members, and yeah, I know. Okay, next. Okay, let's just doing one more there, and that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Hi, that was fabulous. I just wanted to know what happens to the clothes after they're shot.
What did I, who yes, hey. Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Well,
We were
talking.
God, that's loud. We were talking, I was talking to this woman before I did my talk, and she said, oh, did you know there's an exhibit of...
I went to Winter Tour, which is down in Pennsylvania. It's one of the DuPont homes. And in the mansion, which is huge, they had a large exhibit of all the costumes, many costumes of the program Downton Abbey. You know, either they were on mannequins or they were on display, and it was really outstanding. It was very impressive.
And when she was telling me this, I said, oh, I love this, because the one thing that has happened every time I've done this talk is that that's a question that gets asked, is what do they do with the clothes? And that is what they're doing with the clothes now. I never knew the answer until this year, because I think they're really capitalizing or responding to the desire of people to see the clothes, because there's also an exhibit of Downton Abbey clothes in LA, and I wish, if you just Google, it's a little tiny state, Delaware. In Delaware, there is an exhibit of Downton Abbey clothes. So I think that is what they're doing. My understanding is that the deal they have with Ealing Studios, which is a huge costume rental company, is that they make the clothes that they make ultimately will belong to that studio, and that allows them, I think that really helps the budget. But given the popular appeal of the show, for now, I think there are going to be these national tours of the clothes. So my suggestion would be, anybody, if you know you're going to New York or LA or someplace, check and see when there's an exhibit nearby. Yes?
I don't have a question, but I just have a comment about the show. I thought your lecture was wonderful and about the costumes and so forth and the acting. But for me, one of the things that makes the show so engaging is the music. And on EPR last year, they did an interview with the composer of the music. I think it really adds a lot.
Oh, I do too. I do too. I
drama.
thank you for mentioning that. Who is the composer?
I don't know.
But there is, as you may have, if you came in early, you heard music, and I've downloaded on iTunes, I downloaded there's an album called The Music of Downton Abbey, and it's spectacular. Anyone else? Yes. Here.
You mentioned and showed the ladies' undergarments.
Mm-hmm.
Were there differences in men's undergarments as well?
No,
Or didn't you get it?
No, I tell you, I've done my research. The men's undergarments historically, again, I mean, it has been a patriarchal society for a really long time, okay? There is my theory, again, a joke. My theory, though, is that the men around it, because really until the late 17th century, men were more uncomfortable than women were. I mean, it was the male peacock, and men did look more awesome than women, and they did hurt, you know, and suffer for looking fabulous. And then I think they all just got together and went, this is really uncomfortable. And they were like smoking, and it's like, yeah, God, oh, my codpiece is just like, oh, it itches. And then they said, they know there are wives, and what if we just make them wear this crap? And yeah, and that's my theory. That's my theory, is that's why, I swear to God, but that's just me imagining. I think the men's undergarments have just been really, in 19th and early 20th century, honest to God, whether it was winter, spring, summer, or fall, English and American, long wool underwear. And Dr. Gustav Jaeger, I think it was probably around 1880-ish, had a theory that how good wool next to your skin was for you. And so really, even, they wore a lot of scratchy wool undergarments, again, regardless of season. And it wasn't until I think, because I did a show in the 20s and I really wanted to use a different kind of short. What they were doing by then, by the late 20s, it is, it's a onesie. It's like long johns, but it's got more of the A-team, what we call a wife beater kind of. Huh? Yeah. Union suit was, though. That was it for a long time.
How did they do the shoes?
How did they do the shoes?
Were they vintage shoes?
No, they can't be vintage shoes, because vintage shoes are really tiny, and the ones that have survived are very fragile. So for most of the shoes, there actually are good knockoffs, but they use a shoemaker who actually works, again, costume houses like the costume house they work out of have craftspeople who can make those things. And again, I think that the just look at think of how Disney did whatever this has a relationship to what I'm talking about. I know everyone's going, oh God, there she goes. But the movie, the cartoon movie with Elsa. Frozen. Okay, Frozen came out last year. If you have been in a store, like a clothing store, you go into Kmart. I mean, Elsa and that Frozen stuff's everywhere. So they're making money off that. So is Downton Abbey. I mean, Downton Abbey can afford to do a lot now because there are so many commercial tie-ins. You can buy their tea, their earrings, you can buy it all. The good news, though, again, for those of you who are anxious about the next season, I have a real feeling it's going to be like the first season. It's going to be lighter and happier, and I think it's gotten its mojo back. Do you know that the actors who left, this was a misconception that some had, the actors who left, I know audience members were kind of mad that the series got rid of Matthew and that they got rid of Sybil. They didn't get rid of anybody. Those actors quit.
They wanted to leave. Right?
Yeah, they wanted to leave. They had to fashion the stories to serve the absence of those actors. So just know that wasn't the plan. You have a question?
Me?
Yeah.
Yes. Is there anything incorrect in the etiquette of the way the actresses wear their clothes? I think I've read in Miss Manners that the ladies do not wear their gloves properly in the dining scenes.
I think that's probably true. I am not that. I mean, that's not my area. So that you found me out.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm very sorry.
Found me out. I have to do the walk of shame out of the library now.
I'll ask a different question.
Okay, yeah, help redeem me.
I think I've seen a movie still of Ingrid Bergman off camera when she was doing maybe Gaslight, and they made this thing that looked like an ironing board with arms for her to lean against because she couldn't sit down and crease the costumes.
Yes.
Is there anything the actresses have to do in order to wear the clothes so that they don't get creased for the scenes, or because they incorporate vintage materials?
Wow, that's a really good question. I feel like you get an A and you get an A. No, you tell I'm a teacher. I think that it's pretty standard that when you have someone in a very fine garment, well, you noticed with if you saw on the slideshow, this relates to the hair, where they will wear paper around the necks of the men's shirts and the women's dresses so that no makeup gets on them. The women are all wearing paper around their heads to hold that. In terms of the costumes, you don't put the costume on them until just before, if it's a fragile piece. They're not allowed, they're right, one is expected to lean, because again, if it's a special scene and here appears Lady Sybil or something and it's this grand entrance and she's all wrinkled. Because again, historically, we're at a time where synthetic fabrics have not been invented yet. There are no synthetic fabrics, so that everything shows a wrinkle. And certainly the summer, all the men are in linen. I mean, that is what all the men are in, linen. Oh my God, we all know, right? Oh, can we talk? So there is that. I think I think with ladies it's less of an issue because most of us are vain enough that we're very conscious about wrinkling anywhere. But I think the men are much more comfortable. The thing that I know that they have struggled with in terms of less, I think, about staining or wearing, and more about how things are. I spend ages trying to get my actors to wear their pants where they're supposed to be. Hello. And I will tell them that it wasn't until the 1960s, in the history of fashion, the entire history of fashion, even when men were wearing chlamys and chitons, if there was a belt, it was at the waist. And where is your waist, young man? It's right here. You know, and so I think even with these younger actors, I don't doubt that the wardrobe people have, you know, the set person has to go around and say, okay, you're wearing your pants, because they just can't conceive of it. They can't bear the thought of wearing them up at the waist, which is where men wore pants until the 1960s. And all the men here are going, oh, geez, so dumb to wear it up there. Anybody else? Yes.
I really liked the costumes, the dresses that, I think her name was Rose, the young girl that moved in.
Yeah.
They were especially beautiful, I thought. But are you saying that every one of these costumes are handmade by somebody?
No, I'm not saying that. But that I would say certainly the costumes that Lady Mary wears, given her stature in the series, her clothes are definitely made, and there's nothing vintage they could use. I think that I think that many of the pieces have, you know, they're doing this very clear thing with a bodice, you know, and finding a nice antique piece of fabric and fashioning a garment around that. But I think it has a lot to do with how long the scene is too. So that certainly if there is a dining scene, like Rose got pretty physically active when I saw her, but we have also seen scenes where the family is just sitting at the table eating, and there's maybe a little exchange prior to sitting down. And I think for that, the slimmer ladies could certainly be wearing vintage, and that would make it through it. So I think it's a combination of, think of all the period movies, all the Merchant Ivory films, and all of, especially as we get further into the history of fashion, there are costume companies that have some gorgeous things that have been made that can be used on extras. So I think that probably at this point, certainly the stuff for Violet, you know, the mother, and, you know, for the principals, but I think a lot of the extras are probably wearing stuff from rental places.
I was really fascinated by your program, and is this working? Yes. Yeah, okay. I happen to have a little first-hand knowledge because my grandsons are in the Santa Fe Opera. And they're little kids, they're twins.
Yeah.
And I've toured their costume department, which was fascinating. And they hand make the costumes for these little kids, from shoes to stockings to hats to the long underwear, wool underwear they have to wear if they're in a period thing. And I was really amazed at how much detail goes into the wardrobes. And I don't know about the other extras. They're sort of, as my 8-year-old grandson said, "Grandma, I'm a principal, not an extra." And so I'm sure that when we all go to see the broadcasts of the Met programs at the Latches, you have to realize that there's a tremendous amount of effort that goes into that, as well as you, of course, know, and the movies and so forth. And we all kind of take it for granted, and we see these gorgeous costumes. And I understand that they do then send them to the rental places, but the principals' outfits are all specifically made, no question about that.
Now, Santa Fe Opera is like, I mean, that's in the top 10 of the country in terms of the quality of the work that they produce out in, like, Oregon, the Ashland Shakespeare in Oregon. But what opera companies do is they actually have an awesome exchange program with one another, so that even at the Met, you'll see stuff that you may have seen at Santa Fe. They'll just rent the whole show. And that's why if you travel a lot, you could actually see 6 different productions of Diego and see it with the same, the exact same costumes, actually. That would be sad. Be sad. Anybody else?
How many more seasons of Downton Abbey?
I think your guess is as good as mine. She asked how many more seasons of Downton Abbey. I think a lot will hang on how this one goes. They're continuing to draw, but who knows? I think that Julian Fellows, who is the creator and writer, I think he's up for another 2 years, certainly. But, I think last year was not, was one that a lot of the viewership fell off. So I think it'll all depend on how this season goes. But I have high hopes. Anybody else? Thank you very much. Thank you.